We have a unique demographic to start with. You know, we're a college town, and we are the home to a lot of breweries here in Fort Collins. And so that's been a challenging demographic for us all along. But we've added medical marijuana to the mix, which has really created some interesting and very, very challenging opportunities, if you will.
Rocky Mountain High has taken on a whole new meaning in parts of Colorado. In the year 2000, voters in the state amended the Constitution to allow for medical marijuana. Not much happened for years, and then
I call a perfect storm that occurred when the Department of Justice had sent signals that they weren't going to enforce federal law in certain ways in states that had medical marijuana laws. And our Department of Health for this state really threw out the regulations that were there under an almost 10-year-old medical marijuana constitutional amendment. When they threw those out, we saw dispensaries just pop up like mad in our area.
That was late 2009, and there were few regulations.
And that really caught us off guard. Like I said, this was kind of a sleeping giant that was out there. We didn't realize the impact that this was going to have. There was no legal structure for them to open under, so they were opening all kinds of different places.
So the city began working on ordinances to regulate the dispensaries and the industries that go along with them.
We needed to look at where do we want them located, where do we not want them located. We needed to look at operational things, what hours should they operate, what kind of visibility or odor issues do we want to address from the outside, people walking by. We wanted to address who's allowed to own a dispensary and operate it and their employees.
Both the city council and the state legislature were working to regulate at the same time, and that created problems.
It was a really fast, clumsy chess game, trying to make a move and figure out how that was going to work, and something else didn't, and so how do we work around that? And it's been interesting and frustrating on all sides, I'm sure.
While the wrangling was going on, many dispensaries were already open and did not comply with the newly passed guidelines.
Because we allowed these businesses to open, and we didn't have any regulation in place at the time, we had to deal with some legal issues as far as grandfathering these establishments. After we did put some regulatory framework in place, we then had to go back and decide what we were going to do with the ones that weren't in compliance with the new regulations that we just passed. And we ended up grandfathering those businesses.
Now 23 medical marijuana dispensaries are operating in Fort Collins, a city of about 140,000 people. Like it or not, marijuana is part of current city life. And with the prevalence of pot comes something preventionists see as a real danger.
I think the biggest challenge that we see is that the perception of harm in our community around marijuana has just dropped off like crazy. It's being viewed by our young people as a medicine with no side effects, and it's perfectly legal, if you will. And the downside of marijuana is seen as nothing, as no big deal.
Countering that notion with education is not easy.
They have organized, and they're very well organized. There's a council of medical marijuana dispensary owners here in northern Colorado. They're very well funded because their business is very lucrative. The only funding that we can try to combat this is the monies that we receive through our grants. So if we're matching dollars, there's no fight there because we can't match dollars. It has stretched our capacity tremendously because our funding has not been around marijuana. Our funding is around alcohol primarily. And yet we have to be limber and we have to be flexible and respond to community need. And so it's stretched us in ways that have been very, very challenging to us.
Dispensary owners say the coalition is using scare tactics and that their businesses are legitimate and operating within the laws.
They would maintain that they've removed the black market for this drug. Our experience with community members has been that there's a new black market, that the marijuana is being sold, that's being purchased in many of the dispensaries is then being sold on a secondary market to folks that are using it recreationally. Many of those folks are young people.
School leaders are seeing proof of that all the time.
We have seen over the past couple of years marijuana showing up in the actual containers from the marijuana dispensaries. So that is happening obviously more and more. That, you know, we bus kids and they've got pot in the baggie that still has the stamp on from the marijuana dispensary, or they got the marijuana in a jar that probably came from the dispensary in that way. I don't know that the kids are actually going to the dispensaries and getting it directly from the dispensaries. I kind of think it's sort of the liquor store model where you find someone who's older who go and buy it for you, and then you buy it from that person. That's what I see happening.
That doesn't surprise law enforcement.
Put it this way, this is a very porous kind of a system. So you get seepage out of this system in a lot of different ways. I think you get backdoor sales out of cultivation facilities and dispensaries. And I think you also get registered patients that go in and purchase and then secondarily sell to someone else. So it is a very porous system.
And the dispensaries are easy to find. A local newspaper published a map of all of them, and it's difficult to avoid advertising in signs with catchwords like wellness, health, and remedy.
I think a lot of them are using the name to try to legitimize their business. They want to be seen as a natural remedy or a natural wellness type of medication or something like that. So a lot of them have kind of a non-threatening name. The Infinite Wellness, A Kind Place, Kind Care. So a lot of them just have this kind of a innocent sounding name that if you didn't know what it was and you drove by, like, oh look, A Kind Place, they must take care of puppies there.
That message is what has the coalition looking towards the future and the next fight that lies ahead.
I think coalitions across the country really need to ramp up the education around this drug and what its effects are on particularly the developing brain and the developmental health of young people. If we don't get our hands on this thing and begin to understand it, I think the public health ramifications are going to be something that we have no idea how we're going to handle the public health ramifications of this down the road.